VBA Chapter 1067, Huntsville, Alabama.
The committee made a report at the Leadership Conference on 2 different days, and they're still working on it, still refining it, and in Spokane at the National Convention, we will have the opportunity to vote whether to proceed with this or say, no, we don't want to have anything to do with it. And maybe you went to the Reno convention. No? Oh, y'all are too young. All right. No, in Reno, they had a proposal to change the name of VBA to Veterans of Modern Warfare, and it was voted down. Okay? Now, I didn't have the paper nor the ink to print all of you a handout. So I printed one for the officers, and I gave your president a master catalog. Okay? So if he goes into his conference room and starts reading, you know where that conference room is at, don't you? Okay, well, then you can quiz him lately. A gist of Group 1 and Group 2. Group 1, and I'm going to vacillate between Group 1 and Committee 1. And I'm going to read their title, okay? That poor guy.
Well, there's a bar on the other side of that float.
At least.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yep. Y'all have a lifeguard on duty in there?
She's not certified.
He went down the drain.
Can I do something?
Do whatever you want to.
I taught auto mechanics for 30 years. By the way, I was in Vietnam 67, 68. Got there just before Tet. You know, they fed me a Christmas dinner, and they said, by the way, they're going to blow the place up. So after Tet, I went out in the field, and I spent the rest of my time with the 86 land clearing team. We had the D70 cat dozers with the wrong plow. So I tell people that I really don't want to talk to about Vietnam, I tell them that we circled our bulldozers and we camped and sat around the fire and sang Kumbaya. So I enjoyed it. We had a lot of good time, and we cleared a lot of trees, jungle, rubber plantations, and an occasional village. Especially when the village elder would come up and say, I have VC, clear my village. We said, all right. All right. Committee 1, Group 1. VBA will remain the same congressionally chartered organization. It has been and will develop a strategic plan to transition at a time certain in the future. That time to be determined by the working group with input from and the approval of the general membership represented by the delegates at a national convention. Basically what they've done is left it open to what national convention they're going to vote on. But right now they're looking at Spokane. Working Group 2, or Group 2, VBA will determine the feasibility of forming, chartering, funding, or empowering of a new veterans organization to perpetuate our legacy and assure the tomorrow of all veterans. I think lawyers wrote this, I'm not sure. This task will be accomplished by this working group with input from and the approval of the general membership represented by the delegates at the National Convention. All right. Now we can get into the who's and wherefores. And I'm not going to, if I hear stomach start growling, I'll really cut it short, okay? Basically what they want to do with Group 1, they're talking and their timeline is 10 to 15 years in the future. I'm 72, 10, 12, and 15 years in the future, my children will probably be visiting me, or my headstone anyway. One of the reasons that VBA has started this is because they have adopted the term last man standing organization. We're not generating any new Vietnam veterans of America. All Vietnam veterans that are around, they just haven't joined your organization yet. Maybe it's because the state hasn't put enough money out there to shake the state tree hard enough so that Vietnam veterans know there is an organization called Vietnam Veterans of America. And that's just my personal opinion. Anyway, they're looking to dissolve the national VBA. Now, there's a lot of strategy going into this on how they're going to do it. It's not going to be a quick process. They want, first of all, for it to be discussed in Spokane, which if you've never been to Spokane and you're thinking about how expensive it is to go to Spokane, remember how critical the vote's going to be on this one particular issue. I used to live there. I went to high school there, and the food is terrific, and the scenery is better than terrific, okay? I'm not going to call out the members of this working group, but it's on the sheet. The handouts that I gave out for the officers, it's on page, well, that's pretty good. It's not even numbered. It's on the page. There was 12 members, including Sharon Hobbs, who's the president of ABVA, and the facilitator was Bob Lewis, who's a reverend. Now, their discussion has been going on for over a year. So they've been trying to take into account how to transition, how to make sure that everybody is happy with dissolving VBA. I don't know about you, but I'd like to see them just, the last man standing gets all the money. I don't know, that's just personally. But anyway.
What would it do?
Sir?
What would it do with it?
Well,
Make two rules.
well, the money that you might get, you could have a good party by yourself for sure. All right. Part of Working Group 1's goals were to develop a comprehensive strategic plan to assist the VBA Board of Directors in dissolving the VBA Corporation. Now, keep in mind, if they dissolve the corporation, they're not going to dissolve the chapters. So before you start popping up hands at all, they're talking about dissolving the national corporation, not the chapters. Now, there is a possibility as state chapters, we could dissolve the state council and just have, our own chapters survive. How many of you have heard of an organization called VetNow? Or Vietnam? VetNow. I think it was VetNow. VetNow was a national Vietnam veterans organization that dissolved the national. They went through this process probably about 3 or 4 years ago. And it was seamless. They also, they determined the legal and practical requirements for closing the corporation, identify vital actions required, determine vital actions, implementation dates, recommend a process and timing for assets disposition, preserve the VBA legacy, and transition with pride. Okay, you might have a question, how can you transition and preserve the VBA legacy? This new veterans organization that they're talking about starting is like a Y or a child of VBA. It will form with possibly VBA members and with Iraqi and Afghani vets. And what they're talking about doing is make sure that they know how to address Congress, how to address the medical and mental aspects that veterans require nowadays. So they're not just going to throw the baby and the water out together. This is a long thought out process. Identify legal and practical topics important to the VBA Corporation and to the membership. Assign Working Group 1 members to each subgroup. Develop a worksheet for each subgroup. Solicit input from membership beginning at this conference and continuing until the 2019 National Convention. Develop a strategic plan based on Working Group 1's determination and recommendation and input from the membership. A question already?
No, I'm just going to be the first one in line.
Oh, okay, well, I'm prepared for this since I got a check here for $1,000. I'm ready to go.
This organization is going together to solve all these problems. Have they even talked with the VFW, which is probably an older organization, and it's the only organization now that the Afghan guys, the Iraqi guys, and all the other guys are after all the stuff that happened in Vietnam. That's the only organization they can join.
Okay, let me give you a little history of why the VBA was formed. When I got out of the service, I was discharged in '68. Our problems, PTSD, Agent Orange and all like that, DAB, American Legion, VFW didn't want a thing to do with us. That's one of the main reasons that VBA was formed. And under that history of rejection, the committee and VBA is looking to form a new veterans organization, they believe with a greater strength to help the Afghani, the Iraqi, Syrian veterans. So that's the idea. They just don't want to drop it because there are specific things that VBA has been doing with Agent Orange, children of Agent Orange, things of this nature that they believe is, they're working with Congress, they believe that their strength needs to be passed on to a new veterans organization. So basically what, I can't talk without using...
Well, I know, because that's what the organizations are doing. They're doing one of these numbers.
Well,
They refuse to come together and help the vets.
Well,
one wants to go this way and one wants to go that way.
Well, when you have an organization that says they do more for veterans than anybody else, that's pretty tall. When you have organizations that depend more on ceremony than anything, I mean, that's my personal opinion, okay? I paid my own money to go to this leadership conference because I wanted to see what was happening. I was the only one there from Alabama. Wayne wasn't there either. So,
That was probably godsend.
Sir?
That might have helped you.
It did. People were more friendly to me. But anyway, what I'm going to do with my hands, basically what they're talking about doing. And I believe on the national website, they video all of the sessions. They had a great session on writing bylaws and other classes. But what they want to talk about, if you can imagine my hand is like a Y. This is VBA right now. And what they want to do, after they get the okay from the current membership, they want to start a new organization. Their first move is to identify strong leaders from other organizations. They want to bring them to DC, train them, and introduce them to what they want in a leadership in a new organization. And from that, as we continue on our last man standing direction, and as we pass away, I mean, we can't, I'm 72, so I've already had one heart attack, you know, I can't chase cars anymore. So the idea is they want to continue a good, strong veterans organization that's not doesn't have a lot of internal politics, but has a contact with politicians and congressmen, okay?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, sir, because the VFW has got a lot of politics involved.
Right, and how can the VFW and the American Legion spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on race cars and sponsoring race cars? They should be helping veterans. But again, that's my opinion.
Well, that's a pretty good opinion.
Thank you. All right. Anyway, the working group 1, if a new organization is not formed, the working group 1 strategic plan needs to be comprehensive enough to be a standalone document for dissolving the VBA corporation. Now, right now, you're getting a federal tax number under the national organization. It's an umbrella. When you file your 990N, you're using the national tax number. So we depend on the national for a lot of things. If the national dissolves, and these were questions that was asked in an open session there, once they decide to dissolve, how long will chapters continue to receive the monies, the equity money from the life membership that they're receiving now? The answer was that would be determined in the future. All of this hinges on the 2019 convention in Spokane. Okay? Sir?
Well, one question.
Okay.
You mentioned a corporation. Now, is the VBA a part of the corporation, or is the VBA the corporation?
All right. If you look, the Constitution, by the way, the VBA Constitution and all the rules and regulations that govern the chapters and the state council are on the VBA.org website.
Gotcha.
So you can read all
I read
that.
those.
Okay. The National Constitution calls VBA the corporation.
Okay, so, see, if you have a corporation, you have to have articles of incorporation
Right.
already written. And in those incorporation articles, there's also a process for disabling the corporation.
That's true.
So if
But-
a chapter is operating as you indicated from that financial number, then when the corporation dissolves,
They have to get your own.
yeah, therefore
Okay.
the chapter to dissolve.
You're getting ahead. You're going to have to leave. Now, that's an excellent question, but you've gotten ahead of me. When the corporation, right now we come under the federal tax ID number, and I understand from some older members, at one time, every chapter had to have their own federal tax ID number, and for that reason, there had to be a 501c 19 something. But anyway, and don't hold me to that because I'm not a bookkeeper nor a treasurer. I can't even dance anymore. All right, but that, what you said, is part of Group 2's recommendation, okay? But that's an excellent point. Yes, if the national dissolves, then each chapter will have to apply and get their own federal tax ID number. Not only that, if the national corporation dissolves, chapters and the delegates from each chapter can vote whether to keep a state council or dissolve a state council, and that way you'll have individual chapters. And again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Anyway, a lot of this hinges on the convention in Spokane. Working Group 1 finances, they're going to, according to this, it said in 2017 expenses for the national, for the corporation was $8,330,058. Now, most of you realize that the national is operating a, what do they call it, home goods program. They take donated cars, which we can't do in Alabama because we can't handle things like that.
We drive our cars to the dime.
Well, at one time I understand Alabama had a furniture program, which basically a lot of chapters operated like a thrift store where people would donate furniture. We would sell it, a percentage went to national, a percentage went to the chapter, and a percentage went to the state council, but someone dissolved. Okay, won't be any name calling. All right. State councils and chapter outcome. Chapters and state councils. VBA National is a New York nonprofit corporation. Each state council and chapter is a nonprofit corporation organized under the laws of the state in which it is located. Your chapter should be incorporated. Your chapter should be a charitable organization according to the state of Alabama. Each state has got different rules and regulations for charitable organization. But I don't believe there's anybody who can tell you what every state is like. Under the laws of the state, by the way, you know there's separate laws for charitable organizations, so not only do you have to abide by the VBA Constitution, but you also have to abide by the state of Alabama charitable organization guidelines, which has messed up a few organizations. And that's through the Secretary of State and the Secretary of State and who's that other guy that's running for office right now? Attorney General. That both of them share in that area. For federal income tax purposes, VBA National has been recognized by IRS as a Section 501c19 tax exempt organization, and each state council and chapter is recognized under the umbrella afforded by VBA National. Tax exemption rather than having its own tax exemption from IRS. When VBA National Corporation dissolves, the VBA Constitution will cease to exist, leaving a vacuum for important matters such as the requirement for membership relations, which basically each chapter will have to rewrite their own bylaws and requirements for membership. They'll also have to have a joint agreement among chapters. Authority and duty of state councils will have to be evaluated. State councils and chapters which decide to continue the existence will need to redefine the internal corporate structures and as well as their relationship with the state council and other chapters, as well as their tax-exempt corporate status under federal law. When the VBA National Corporation dissolves, state councils and chapters will need to decide whether they wish to continue in existence. There will be at least 1 year's advance notice before national dissolves. Each state council and chapter should consider consolidating with or consulting with an attorney and a tax professional to assist with the dissolving or a continuation of the state council or chapter in accordance with this decision. Each continuing state council should consider obtaining federal tax exempt status. It may be possible for a state council to provide umbrella coverage for the chapters. Each continuing state council should assist its chapters by making legal and tax assistance available to the chapters to avoid unnecessary duplication of effort. Each continuing state council should provide guidance in the level of rewriting bylaws which are consistent with the state council's revised bylaws. A continuing state council may also be a good resource. We'll just skip that. State councils that continue in existence should assist chapters. Each chapter will need to decide its own future. Each continuing chapter not having a state council should consider obtaining a federal tax exempt status. Each chapter will need to adopt its own bylaws regarding membership requirements, chapter structure, and relationship with other chapters and the state council. Each chapter should consider obtaining federal bonding and other corporate insurance as necessary. If a chapter is in a state with a state council which has decided to continue in existence, then the state council may be a good resource for attorney and tax. I've said that before. If a chapter decides that it does not wish to continue, then it needs to dissolve in accordance with the Articles of Incorporation and state laws. Rule of thumb on dissolving. We have some very small chapters in Alabama. One has got about 20 members. If they decide to dissolve, they have to have a vote of their membership to dissolve. Whatever assets they have can be donated, which is monetary or physical, can be donated to another charitable organization, Boy Scouts, whatever. But it has to follow the Alabama State charitable guidelines. Once they do that, they have to notify the state of Alabama that they've gone through this process and that their chapter is now dissolved. So there are different legal ways that a chapter or a charitable organization can dissolve. Membership status after the VBA dissolves, it says that shouldn't say anything. Oh, it says that working group for closure date is possibly, it says 5 years is too quick to dissolve, 20 years is too long, and what they might do, May 2028 will coincide with the 50th anniversary of the VBA, and the average member in that particular year will be 82 years of age. I'm gonna fool them, I'm gonna live longer than that. Now, if you have any questions, there's no guarantee I can answer it. I said earlier, all of the sessions at the Leadership Conference were recorded. I've called National several times to see when they're going to put them on the internet or on VBA.org. They keep telling me they're working on it. So, to me, that means like they're finally editing what they're going to put up there. But if they put one, they're going to put the one on writing bylaws, and they had classes on come on, Frank, come back. They had the class on Group 1, Group 2, and then they had a question and answer session. In the question and answer session, there was a lot of questions, and most of the time the answer was, we're working on that. We don't know. That's up to leadership. So you'll know more if you're a delegate in Spokane, okay? This is going to be, I'm sure, hotly debated. Now, I will try and answer any questions you have on Committee 1 or Group 1 before I move on to Group 2. How much time am I
Well,
taking?
what we're gonna do is I'm gonna do the Group 2 with the board.
Okay.
Because we got a lot to cover now, so.
Okay.
We'll do that.
I left that book.
Yeah.
It's got a lot of good information.
Yeah, I got the book. Don't try and take that book out of here now.
I can't run that fast, the door's too far away. If you just what we've done already, we've tried to educate ourselves about what might happen. Now, 416, we have 200 members, you know. We hadn't gone out and brought all these teenagers in like you did. Several things that they had to look at to get over the hurdle, and I'm going to be real quick. A lot of states have got veteran service officers that are being paid by VBA. There's no VBA veteran service officers in Alabama because somebody wouldn't authorize them. And actually somebody did away with them. I think I've covered everything in here. The question I had that was never answered is how long will payments to the chapters continue? And one answer I got was, we don't think they'll be paying out a lot since most of your members will be dying. So I thought, well, I'm not gonna go home and tell them. So wait a minute, I'm starting to take your book. Yeah, I'm starting to take it.
Hey, give Ron a round of applause. What he basically done is he helped us to get ahead of the power curve. You know, I was taking some notes, and what I'm thinking is that we'll start now. I was looking at one page he had, and he says by the time we close this organization, we will all probably be somewhere around 92 years old. 82? Boy, shucks, we young then, man.
Well, you know, I think they missed the point because people are living longer now. And my insurance company sent me this Fitbit, so I'd walk more. And I've been walking more, but I also found out if I wiggle my arm, I put more steps on it too.
All right, Rob, thank you.
VVA Chapter 1067, Serving Vietnam-Era Veterans. Never again will one generation of veterans abandon another. Thank you for watching.